Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap-up, the WNW 218 for Friday, December 4th, 2015. And I know you've been bombarded with this story. The San Bernardino bloodbath is what they're calling here on the front page of USA Today. A bloodbath in San Bernardino. And this is as terrible as the terror attack in San Bernardino, California is. It's not really the big story. I know you've been seeing wall-to-wall coverage of this attack. And I'm sure some of the Democrats and the president would like to call this workplace violence. But I mean, come on, absurd. I mean, with the bomb straight out of the Al Qaeda playbook, and all the weapons and the ammunition and the planning, and they're being very cagey about other people who have helped them. You know, there were eyewitness reports saying that there were multiple people in and out of the residence they were working out of, not just two or three. The two people were killed, of course. The assailants, the alleged assailants, were got into a police shootout. And I'm sure that the president and some Democrats would also like to use this as a good excuse for anti-gun legislation, but more delusional. And go no further than Black Friday gun sales. They broke records. The president and his administration and some of these Democrats, not all, because some Democrats they're wanting a gun. But, they are out of touch with most Americans. And this Black Friday gun sales records was made before this attack occurred. And of course, what the mainstream media won't tell you is that they were getting ready for a Christmas party. This was a Islamic terror attack, which the president or his administration cannot say. And I don't want to dog out and paint a broad brush to all Muslims. But the Muslims in the world is a big group of people, 1.6, 1.7 billion. If 1% is radicalized, that means it's 16 or 17 million. If 10%, that'd be 160 or 170 million radicalized Muslims. And they're getting radicalized at some mosques, according to police research and police reports. And this is outrageous that our president can't even say the words radical Islam, which is what it is. And he'll play hell getting any kind of gun legislation, anti-gun legislation, through Congress. It's not going to happen. Delusion. And this brings us to the next story, and the next story is the big story, and that is the Middle East and what is going on in the Middle East. And increased tensions are mounting in Syria, and especially with Turkey, NATO, and Russia, after Turkey shot down this Russian jet. Bad idea. I mean, here they shoot down this jet, act of war, and then the people that they're supporting on the ground murder one of the pilots coming down in a parachute, war crime. And, evidence shows that Turkey has been buying oil from ISIS. That's just the way it is, folks. Remember I told you, I've been saying this more than one time for months, if not more than a year, that, the Obama administration isn't serious about the war on terror, the war against ISIS. If they were, they would knock out these oil producing facilities, the pumps, the trucks, the pipes. They would just knock it out and cut off their oil. Well, now we found out why he didn't cut off their oil. They're selling it to a NATO member, Turkey, and apparently the U.S. is tacitly approving of funding ISIS. It's sad. And, now we found out maybe why Turkey shot down that Russian fighter jet. They were cutting in on their action. I'm sure that, ISIS was selling to Turkey at a big discount, maybe $20 a barrel. Who knows? But the U.S. must have known. And then we have the, a former assistant CIA director coming out and admitting, the administration didn't want to destroy the oil assets. They didn't want to destroy the infrastructure. And they were afraid of an ecological disaster. If you bomb a pump and leave the oil in the ground, where's the huge ecological disaster? Yeah, I mean, really? Which basically is more admission that, we knew they were pumping oil and it was going somewhere, Turkey, a NATO ally. And this has got members of Congress on both sides of the aisle freaking out and a bit upset. And here we have Dana Rohrabacher, who was wondering whether Turkey should be in NATO, A, for shooting down that Russian jet, and B, for financing ISIS. his House Democratic compadre across the aisle. Her name is Tulsi Gabbard. She's a Democratic representative from Hawaii, former military, and she was putting it to Ash Carter, the defense secretary, and basically asking him about if it was a wise decision to put U.S. jets in a position to intercept Russian jets. And she was wondering out loud about it causing a big, a possible touching off a nuclear war between the U.S. and Russia. This is serious, folks. This is why this is the big story. And then to actually put sprinkles on the case and really show you how much of a sticky situation the whole Middle East has become, you have retired General Wesley Clark, who was the former Supreme Commander at NATO, so he knows a few things about the inner workings of the U.S. military and what's going on around the globe. And he pointed out just how sticky the whole Middle East mess is when he said this past week, and let me read this to you. General Wesley Clark said, let's be clear, ISIS is not just a terrorist organization, it's a Sunni terrorist organization. That means it blocks and targets Shia, that's Iran. That means that it's serving the interest of Turkey and Saudi Arabia, they're Sunni, even as it poses a threat to them. Remember I told you early on multiple times as Syria boils down to the Hatfields and McCoys, Sunni versus Shia. I mean, there's all kinds of other stuff going on there, but this is what a sticky situation that is. We have a NATO ally that is risking war because it's in NATO, one for all for one. If Russia did attack Turkey, the U.S., France, Germany, everybody in Great Britain, everybody in NATO would have to. I don't think France is in NATO, but everybody in NATO would have to, all for one, one for all. They'd have to come to their defense. That could start off a global war. Because somebody's greedy, getting oil at a deal and lining their pockets and financing people who cut other people's heads off, ISIS. And then you have, the U.S. putting more boots on the ground after the president said there would be no boots on the ground. Now granted, there's not 100,000 troops there, but there's about 4,000, and they're sending troops to help the Kurds. And then you see the Shia militias in Iraq saying that they'll kill Americans and that they don't want them here, and the Iraqi government that is in power saying, we don't want your boots on the ground here. And what a mess all this has turned into. And then you have, not just the U.S. sending ships and planes and into the region and boots on the ground and tanks and guns and you name it, sending that. But Germany, France, all the other Middle Eastern countries, Great Britain is now starting to bomb. France has been on a bombing tear. Of course, all this is related to the economy, according to Gerald Celente, who's going to be the early Sunday release coming up. Gerald Celente, the top trends researcher in the country, and he opens some eyes and gives you his trends. He'll wrap up 2015 and give you his trends for 2016, and it's not a pretty picture. You'll want to see it. Gerald Celente will be the early Sunday release on USAWatchdog.com. Back home, Fed head Janet Yellen is signaling an interest rate hike. Otherwise, they wouldn't be on the front page of the USA Today Money section this week. She is signaling big time. I mean, they call up the USA Today and tell them, hey, listen, can you do a story? I don't know if they did that in this case, but you don't end up on the front page. Fed chair ready to raise rates at own pace. What does that mean? Going to raise it a tenth, a quarter, an eighth? They're going to raise it next week. They're going to raise it at the end of the year, beginning of the year. What do you mean? What? Well, evidently, Wall Street thinks this sucks. At least the stock and bond market on Wall Street, because both of them tanked this week. The bond market rates spiked on the 10-year, and the stock market sold off a few hundred points. And so much for the Santa Claus rally. I've had some people say, I wonder if Greg Manarino's prediction of the market top's going to hold. Oh, there's going to be a Santa Claus rally. Really? I don't think so. Manarino called the market top of the stock market, and I mean, he didn't just guess. He had charts, he had research, and he did it on USA Watchdog. And apparently, that market top is holding. Also, meanwhile, the economy continues to sink, and the latest bad news comes in the form of tanking numbers in durable goods and factory orders, and also the money velocity is also tanking. Here is the money velocity, a little chart. Here's 2012, and boing. And that's where we are right now, right about here. And it's continuing to sink. It's not coming up, it's going down. It's just continuing the velocity, how fast money is moving through. I have one of the commenters on this site, Alan, we'll just say that, and he works at UPS, and he says, this time of year, we should be just blowing doors. We'd be working till 2 o'clock in the morning. I get to work at 2, and I should be working till, 4 hours of overtime. And, yeah, I got there at 2, and I got off at 7:45. It's just the traffic at UPS is light where he works. Other headlines include, here we go. And this is a, top headline up here. Majority of world economy weakening as U.S. manufacturing PMI tumbles to 2-year lows. Next up, Brazil releases shocking GDP obituary. It's mutated into an outright depression, says Goldman Sachs. Next up, U.S. total debt soars by $674 billion in November. How long can that go on? That's 1 month, folks. $674 billion. Here we go. As the credit cycle turns global, defaults surge to 6 years highs. 6 years ago, that's 2009. At the depths of this last big recession, credit defaults, global defaults are surging to 6-year highs. Oh, just like it was at the bottom of the last big meltdown. Finally, unprecedented 59% plunge in November heavy truck orders. That kind of goes hand in hand with, transportation and how it's not doing so well. So this is the backdrop for which the Fed is going to raise rates, and oh boy, I think I'll say it again. I've said it before. Whether they raise rates or whether they don't, it is an oh my goodness moment. If they don't raise rates, oh my goodness, the economy really is terrible. It's not going to get any better. And if they do raise rates, ding, 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 we are at the bottom of the interest rate curve. Another one of these things that people say, well, none of your people get anything right. Really? Carl Denninger said they had to raise rates. Who else said Catherine Austin Fitts said they'd have to raise rates. David Stockman said, oh, listen, they've got to raise rates. Peter Schiff said they've got to raise rates. Well, at some point they're going to have to, and it looks like Janet Yellen is signaling she's going to raise rates whether we have a growing economy or not. And it may just be the lesser of two evils. Maybe she can raise rates and paint the phony story that our economy's doing great. We're strong enough to raise rates, which we're really not, but maybe people will believe that. I don't know. Next up, we have this story, which I brought up to you, Carl Denninger, which I just had on this week. Brilliant guy. He's just brilliant on a lot of subjects. He's especially brilliant on the Obamacare, which he said for years, including on his own site and on our site, that Obamacare is going to be a disaster. It's going to kill the economy. You can go back and look at his old interviews on USA Watch. Here is Health Republic, is the latest healthcare co-op to end 12 of 23. I brought this up with Carl Denninger, that, part of what they cite in this article is that not enough government bailout money. Oh, really? Well, apparently Congress has to appropriate bailout money in order for Obamacare to make it, like several $billion. What do you bet the chances of getting a bailout for Obamacare is slim to none? This is a disaster, folks. Now, I'm not the only one. Carl Denninger has said it. I said this is a disaster. You can't insure 40 million people for free. That's what we're insuring. And it's incompetent. It's almost constructed so poorly it's designed to fail. You can't give all this health care away for nothing. And nobody can make any money, obviously, and there's no way that the Republican Congress is going to bail out going to appropriate bailout money. That's why, if the co-ops don't implode, then healthcare insurers like United Healthcare says, sorry, we can't make any money. We're out. Without a bailout, we're out. Well, guess what? The death knell is ringing for Obamacare, which is the biggest policy lie in history, concocted by Democrats. Thank you, Jonathan Gruber from MIT, for outlining and highlighting how you told the lie and how big the lie got, all the way up to the highest levels of the Democratic Party, including the president. The president said he used his information. Jonathan Gruber from MIT. This is the biggest policy lie in history. And Democrats, listen, Republicans have their problems too, but at least they didn't vote for Obamacare. And Democrats lied to America, and now they'd like to have Congress appropriate some bailout money to bail out their big fat policy lie, the biggest in history. That's just not going to happen. Speaking of lying, and I just got to finish up with this because I didn't get this in last week. I took a little vacation with, the Thanksgiving holiday. The Iran deal. I said there would be no Iran deal. Guess what? I was right. There is no deal. Because in order to have a deal, you have to sign a deal. And Mike Pompeo, a House Republican, asked John Kerry's office about the Iran deal and found out from Julia Fritfield, 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 the State Department Assistant Secretary Legislative Affairs person. This is a November 19th letter. He wrote her and said, hey, I want to find out about this JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. She writes back and says, quote, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, is not a treaty or an executive agreement, and it is not a signed document. Let that sink in. The deal with Iran is not a signed document. There is no deal, according to Julia Freefield of the State Department, the Assistant Secretary for Legislative Affairs. There is no signed deal. In Iran, according to published reports, isn't going to sign the deal. It's going to be put too much of a burden on their people. Of course, Fritfield says that, the power of this is the snapback provisions that we're going to snap back the sanctions on Iran. Really? That sounds good, but that's just another big fat lie. So you're going to, all these countries, Germany, France, the U.S., Russia, whoever who's involved in this deal, China, they're going to start doing business in Iran, and then you're going to tell everybody to get out. Oops, we can't back this up. We can't back up our deal that is not signed. You think they're going to snap back these sanctions? No. Just Google it. Mike Pompeo, Representative, California. Iran deal, Mike Pompeo, not signed. I'm telling you, it is not signed. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA, is not a treaty or an executive agreement and is not a signed document. As I predicted, there would be no Iran deal. There is no Iran deal because unless you have a signed document, you have no deal. And I got to tell you, Donald Trump is right when he says that, our leaders are incompetent. John Kerry spent years on this, flying around on the government jet, meeting with all these people, and then he blurts out in Congress one day when he's being questioned in Congress, that's, the military inspections is a side deal at the UN. Really? Was the UN at the table? He doesn't understand the military inspection, which this was all about curtailing not their civilian plan, their nuclear deal, but their military plan. John Kerry doesn't know anything about the inspection of the nuclear facilities for the military, and obviously he didn't get a signed agreement. I can't tell you how incompetent that sounds. And they're going to give there was talk of them giving John Kerry a Nobel Peace Prize for what? For a not unsigned agreement? For a wink and a nod, and we'll give you $150 billion bucks? Outrageous. Google it. That's the way I see it. I'm Greg Hunter. Thank you for supporting USAWatchdog.com with your comments and donations. Remember, fear not. Prepare yourself physically, mentally, and above all, spiritually. Fear not. God's in control. Thank you for supporting USAWatchdog.com.